service, rather than the commercial rental person having surveillance on their property, proving they are disposing of their trash properly. Let's keep the responsibility on the proper parties. If they were required to have adequate trash receptacles that must be professionally serviced, and they have surveillance that Douglas County can access via an online storage through a shared username and password, then the responsibility is on the right party. Finally, you have yet to include the property managers, either local or national, in the responsibility for the rules, other than passing a certification test. They should be fined for property infractions, just as the owners are, as well as sanctions with perhaps a limitation on the number of properties to manage based on the complaints against their units. Their ranks have bad actors as well. You've already had one property manager spill the beans on another property manager at meetings just like this. And your pen is out of ink.
Uh-oh.
There's two because they're both going bad. Use the one.
Kathy, you made it in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
She practiced.
Write it down.
Thank you.
Is it ready?
Huh?
Is it working?
I'm just right. Yeah, I brought my own because I saw everybody having problems, so I brought my own.
There's an extra.
Thank you, AJ. Nancy Gilbert. For many of the provisions in the Douglas County VHR ordinance, there are no real clear or concrete, there isn't a clear and concrete language in order to truly enforce the codes, which is of concern. It also appears that the Douglas County enforcement bends backwards to give VHR permit holders extra opportunities to fix and/or additional warnings when violations continue, causing neighbors' complaints to be ignored or to have to continually have to complain. Before permits are issued, VHR holders are supposed to learn the VHR code and agree to comply with them, right? Well, they don't. And it's clear that repeat and often violations continue because they don't see that there's consequences. When they are found not to be following ordinances, there should be no reason to give them another chance, which is what is being done now. You have a current system of encouraging repeat offenders, disturbing constituent neighbors, and VHR permit holders continuing to ignore the rules because the Douglas County enforcement is just giving out passes by warnings. So in essence, it creates more business or work for the VHR enforcement, but it's not. It's putting the toll on the neighbors. There's just an example. There was a renewal of a permit on November 24th, 2022. We spoke to Ernie Strelo about the issues, and one of the issues was they didn't have parking. Well, in fact, they got a renewal for another year, and 5 days later, yesterday, we went on the VHR, and they are advertising the same parking that supposedly their permit did not allow. I just gave a copy of their VHR advertisement saying that people can park in the roadway in a fire lane in front of their house as part of their designated parking. What I'm saying is we've complained for 2.5 years about this property, and they keep getting passes and they keep getting renewals. Something has got to change. The ordinance either get more strict on your enforcement or scrap the whole system, stop VHRs, and start working on a system that's actually enforceable, which I know is not the way that you're going to go. But come on, you guys, get something that really works for the constituents. Thank you.
Steve Kaplan. Wendy and I have lived full-time in Upper Kingsbury for over 11 years. We have a history of charitable giving, volunteering, and otherwise supporting the Douglas and Carson communities, including hosting a Zephyr Cove elementary dinner for 80 people at our 8,600 square foot VHR at 650 Tina Court. We work very hard to be great VHR hosts and also great neighbors. Noise Aware said that we have the most noise monitors of any house in the country. But resident X, who lives over half a mile and 3 long streets away, on April 27th suddenly started complaining that our guest events ruin her life, not with just noise, but also excessive traffic, lights, people, trash, and cars parked on the street. Well, our street is in a different neighborhood, and we don't allow parking on it anyway. Last August, the 6 residents actually living close to the property, whether right next door or directly behind or to the side, all sent glowing emails to the county confirming the VHR has not changed the neighborhood, nor resulted in any bothersome noise or other issues. Today's meeting materials include X's statement, which is just one of countless claims she's made since April, attacking my family in her hundreds of pages submitted to VHR and Commissioners meeting. For example, she made dozens of accusations alone that we illegally operated our VHR without a permit for a year until caught by code enforcement. X now finally admits that she was wrong, but not because of the absurdity of us deceiving the county over a $260 renewal fee, but because she recently received because she said she recently received our 2020 permit. Yet X referenced and submitted this exact permit over 3 months earlier for a BOCC meeting and acknowledged possession of it months before that. X includes many deceptive claims as part of her extensive lobbying to cancel our VHR stays contracted in good faith per the current 50-person event clause. Forcing our guests to move their intimate weddings would be emotionally devastating and incur economic hardship from loss of deposits with their vendors and from non-refundable travel. X states that if you grandfather in 650 TINA contracts for a year, you must do the same with all VHRs. But I have not found even one of the other 16 Tier 3s to which this would apply. X's personal vendetta is only about us. As she stated in the July 20 Advisory Board meeting, that place has to be revoked for licensing.
30
That's my
seconds.
passion.
30 seconds.
And that was 650 Tina Court. So on behalf of our guests, and given our good record of compliance with Douglas County regulations, I respectfully request that you grandfather in our existing VHR contracts to the end of 2023 under the current event provision of Ordinance 2022-1599. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Any other opening public comment? Okay, seeing none, I'll close opening public comment. We'll move to the approval of the agenda. Anybody want to make a motion or a discussion regarding the agenda? I'll take a motion.
Make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay, thank
Maybe,
you.
Change the,
Yeah, I'm going to take number 2 first and number 1 afterwards. So all those in favor of accepting the agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0. Minutes. Discussion to approve the draft minutes of the July 20th, 2022 and the October 26th, 2022 regular meeting of the Vacation Home Rental Advisory Board. I know the minutes were difficult, the July ones particularly, and those of you that were at the Gardnerville Garage know we had a lot of technical difficulties. So I just wanted to tell the board and the public that, you know, I've worked with Katie on making sure the motions and the votes are correct. The rest of it is a lot of it is gibberish. And so it's very hard to go through it all. So I am hoping that the board is in agreement with me on that. And so I would take a motion, if you want to do it one at a time, take the July 20th, 22 minutes. I need a motion on that, and then the other one. And if we could use the verbiage that's given to us in our packet on page 3 for the motion, that would make it easier.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the minutes of July 20th, 2022, regular meeting of Vacation Home and Rental Advisory Board as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Was that you, Patty? Thank you, Patty. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0 on the July 20th.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the minutes of the October 26th, 2022, regular meeting of Vacation Home and Rental Board as presented.
Thank you. A second?
second.
Michael, is that you, Michael, second?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
5-0 on the October 26th. That takes care of the minutes. Now, I am going to move to agenda item number 2, which is for possible action, review for final approval of a conditional Tier 3 VHR special use permit for 466 Kent Avenue in Zephyr Cove, Nevada, APN 1318315311002. The VHR was conditionally approved to operate as a Tier 3 VHR on December 10th, 2021, pending review of the following items after 1 year. Proof of the locations of installed noise monitors, noise monitor records, and any complaint history. And I will turn this over to Ernie at this time. You're the McNamara's, right? Okay. So, because Ernie wasn't here when you were here in December, so.
You can come up.
Yeah.
This is Ernie Strelo for the record. In your packet, it'll say December 10th, 2010. I don't think it's 2010, I think it's 2021.
Oh.
So, good idea though. So on December 10th, 2021, the Vacation Home Rental Advisory Board conducted a public hearing concerning the Tier 3 VHR special use permit application for 466 Kent Avenue in Zephyr Cove, Nevada, filed by owner Christopher McNamara. The advisory board voted to conditionally approve the Tier 3 permit with a maximum occupancy of 14 persons on condition that Mr. McNamara come before the advisory board after 1 year with proof of the locations of the installed noise monitors, noise monitor records, and any complaint history for further review and consideration by the advisory board. So on or about November 1st, 2022, the county provided notice to Mr. McNamara of the upcoming review date and instructed him to provide the requested noise and complainant information prior to the review date, and he is here. If the advisory board gives final approval to the Tier 3 permit renewal, Mr. McNamara can continue to operate 466 Kent Avenue as a Tier 3 VHR with a maximum occupancy of 14 unless the details of the permit are modified, occupancy number, parking, etc., or the property is sold. If final approval is denied, Mr. McNamara can operate as a Tier 2 VHR with a maximum occupancy of 10. So, with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Strelo. Mr. and Mrs. McNamara, I remember you, thankfully. I mean, that I knew who you were in the audience. Do you have the items that were requested?
Yes.
Or do you have a statement that you wanted to make, or?
So right after that meeting, we went and got the most popular noise monitor, the Minute one. We installed it, sent an email to the then program manager and said, here it is, how are we looking? I don't remember if I even got an email. I think there might have been a change in person, but I assumed because it was
early on.
yeah, so I assumed that where it was placed, which was, we got the photos, in the driveway, the closest we could get it to the street with some type of weather protection.
Okay.
Seemed like a good spot.
You show the.
And then, yeah, we used the software. There wasn't we didn't see any specifications on how to use it exactly, so we used the documentation, which was basically send an alert to us if the decibels go over 75 for more than 20 minutes. So we then have the app, and it sends us an alert. We
This
never
is
got
a graph for the last year from when it started. So
yeah.
it
We weren't-
just shows average levels, and then if it goes up,
Oh yeah, well, yeah, we weren't able to export every single day. If anyone knows how to do that.
you're happy. I have my computer. I can log in and show.
Yeah, but we can
I
look
always
up
look
any
cute.
day, I think, in the past and see where they are, and what you see is when someone starts a car, it goes up, and generally there's ambient noise, and yeah, we never in a year got any notices that would imply there was a loud event, and then that seemed to have been confirmed that we never were notified that there was a noise complaint. So from our perspective, it seemed like that process
Seems like
worked.
was successful. My only statement to add would be, you know, we do have snow removal service, and those, you know, backhoes as they come in, or whatever, the blowers, it can be very loud, you know, and so that could be something if he does take 20 minutes. But I don't even think we had an event that lasted that long, so.
Do you have just the one noise monitor, and it's in the front by the garage?
Yep.
Okay. And do you have a patio? I mean, I don't remember.
It's right next to the patio.
It is right next to the
It's like
patio.
within,
Okay.
It's the only
where's
place
the-
where people sit out front. There's not a backyard, there's not a side yard, it's just the
yeah,
one.
you can see
That-
in the photo, the patio's there and the noise monitor's there. So it's,
Oh, okay, I
You
see.
show the-
It show- And
So
then,
the
if you wouldn't
noise
mind
monitor's
showing
there.
one to this end of the
Patio's
board,
there.
because they'll have some questions they might want to
okay.
ask.
Did you guys want to pass these around or check one?
I'll push it out in the supplemental in the morning.
We just need to make sure that the public gets everything that we get.
Gotcha.
It was kind of hard to put the, like the name of the profile on the same, but this graph is the same as this. But it just has our login information on it.
And so there's been no complaints, Mr. Strelo, that you're aware of?
Ernie Strelo, for the record, there has been.
Oh,
There has been. So we did have on February 27th, the sheriff's report. It is, I'll just read it to you into the record. The officer was dispatched to 465 Kent.
We're
for-
466. Okay.
because 465, I think, is the one across the street.
And that's the big one that was denied their tier 3 status and is now a tier
Maybe we
2.
got the wrong one then.
Because, yeah, we never
Oh,
got,
it's just for 466 Kent.
Go down to the, thing they list the parties.
Brings back memories of how difficult that meeting was,
Yeah.
one from the other.
Would be great to know, because we were never notified if it was in fact for us, so maybe that's a.
Well, while he's checking that out, why don't I see if any of the board members would like to ask you folks some questions so we can move through this. Lauren?
Lauren Romaine for the record. Do you still live in the same spot as you
We're
were?
on
And
Cheyenne Circle.
how far is it from the VHR?
Quarter mile?
Quarter mile, and you're still in that same
Yeah, we're on Cheyenne Circle.
Okay. That's all I have.
Madam Chair. And you, if you remember the logic, you were one of the very first ones who came forward, and we didn't have a lot of experience. And in some respects, that continues today. Like you said, I think you're using the pre-programmed amount. 75 decibels over a 20-minute period.
is when it sends us the alert.
Yeah, and we have not, as yet, determined what nuisance noise is. But if someone had 75 decibels of noise for 19 minutes at 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., I would be nuisanced, right? When you look back, because again, that is such a, taking a year or however long this is and compressing it into one page is almost impossible to read. But when you look back, take out snow blowing, take quiet hours, what would you believe would be nuisance noise from 9 p.m. to 8 a.m.?
I would say, yeah, anything over, 75, 80? Like, if it's.
For how long?
I mean, that's why we hire you as a board member to tell us, but.
You don't pay very well.
Yeah, I don't. It's hard to say because I've noticed like a car idling seems
Can
to
make a noise.
seems to get into that range, which most people wouldn't call.
That's interesting.
So I think I'm not an expert, but the 75 seems pretty low.
Yeah, it's,
And it's also proximity, so that's on the house because it's the only place we have weather protection. I remember in that meeting, we talked, I think we were still brainstorming as a group, but it's like, well, I guess the best spot would be on the property line at the street, because then you'd know how close the sound was, and if that was like what you guys wanted as well, we could do more, and we could try to find the weather protection for that.
It's difficult because you also need electricity and Wi-Fi.
yeah.
I mean, ideally, you'd put it on your neighbor's window.
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah,
that's
where are you gonna
That's where
literally
nuisance,
draw the
that's where
line?
nuisance occurs, right? Their
Yeah.
bedroom window for, is where nuisance occurs, not even at your property line, if you think about it, right? Hopefully you don't have any neighbors standing at your property line being nuisanced.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and so the issue is trying to get electricity and Wi-Fi at your property line versus your house. So, you've probably done the best you can. I guess, my concern is we have yet to define nuisance noise. And noise monitors, customers, are not homeowners, right? They are VHR owners. And I think, again, it's a lot more complex. 20 minutes is a long time to have noise at 2 a.m. 20 minutes is nothing at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Snow blowers are gonna take some more than 20 minutes to plow my house, and no one's ever complained, right? So it is much more complicated. That's why I was wondering, looking back at your data, because what you have there's a page,
Yeah.
but I'm sure you've gone through, maybe
Yeah.
not day by day, but month by month to blow that up, looking at what noise events you've had. That's why I was wondering if you had any insights into what noise your house is producing during quiet hours.
Right here that's my next point. I printed this out this morning at 8:43 a.m. and it was 47 decibels. There's nobody in the driveway, nobody's even there. That's ambient neighborhood noise. So it's also hard to distinguish, how are you going to, label what is a nuisance noise depending on the time of day. It could be annoying to hear a snowplow for 20 minutes make this type of noise at 8 a.m. when you're like trying to make a phone call or whatever. It's so different for each person. So I don't know what the answer is, but just bringing that up, it kind of just depends on, we can define it within the neighborhood quiet hours, sure, but.
I mean,
Thank you.
yeah, when we looked at it, we just didn't see any party-like noise, like 30 minutes, an hour, or whatever. And to our knowledge, we never got a complaint, but we're on pins and needles to know if there was one.
Yeah, Ernie Strela for the record. I'll finish reading this.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Was it that address?
It's the right address.
Yeah.
So, what the officer did is he stood in the driveway. He could hear loud noises coming from within the residence. The voices were elevated and he could hear talking and laughing, but they didn't appear tumultuous or offensive. So I don't know what that means. Maybe they're not having a fight. I don't know what that means. So maybe it was just a lot of conversation or a car game or something like that. I guess that's what that means. He went and talked to the person that was renting the property at the time, and advised them of the complaint and explained the rules to her. And then he was advised that he advised the respondent that he can hear it out in the street, and they apologized and said they would calm down. Now, I don't know, there wasn't a follow-up complaint filed after that, so I assume the noise went away. That's all I can have surmise from that. So it was closed, and then they just forwarded it to us in code enforcement, and we locked it.
Madam Chair, so you said you have your computer with that noise monitor, the noise log on it.
Yeah, I can grab
Can
it.
you look at the time the sheriff's deputy was in your garage and see what your noise monitor, because he's in your driveway, can you see what your noise monitor said?
You should be able to.
Yeah, I can go
Yeah,
get it.
To see if a date and
February
time.
27th at midnight.
Okay.
Midnight.
Um,
Well, he got there at the 12:28 a.m.
What is how shouldn't we have been notified? What's like the process here? Because I would have loved to help, do something about it and contacted my renters and talked to, I'm on, we text and talk all the time with our neighbors that are directly across the street, and we have a really great relationship. And I, tell him at any hours of the day, call me, let me know. If you don't tell me, I can't do my job. And that's the same thing with the sheriff or Chris or our job, together. It's like helping.
So Ernie Strela for the record. In this particular instance, it sounds like the sheriff handled it on his
Okay.
own. So, the other option is, the longer option is to call the code enforcement hotline, they would have referred you back to the sheriff anyways.
Yeah.
What the code enforcement does, we just migrated to host compliance again. So you get a live operator, and the live operator will call the emergency contact. They'll give them 30 minutes and call back and check to make sure it got resolved.
Okay.
The sheriff, they'll do
They don't
it
call
on,
every time, right?
they'll follow it on their own, and they'll just forward the report to us,
Okay.
right?
Well, we'd love to help and be a part and an active manager if needed, so.
So can I just ask, so a neighbor or somebody called the police, right?
Somebody here now.
And the police came, but they weren't migrating police reports with us, or we weren't contacting the owner after you get an unsubstantiated
No,
complaint?
Richard, this is Ernie for the record. Richard, your process is just to log it into your system once you get the report, right?
That's correct.
Because it comes a week later. The reports come like on Thursday. They come a week later. I mean, it's not real time.
But
right?
you
So-
don't, sorry. But you don't contact the permit holder to let them know that there was an occurrence, even if it's unsubstantiated?
No.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand for me and for them.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So I think what we're seeing is, it's one thing to have an illegal parked car, right? That's clearly a VHR issue. But when it's a noise complaint, the sheriff may or may not, we all have the right, and I think, I can't remember one of our public comments said, how much enforcement is going to neighbors, right? But, so I can see the sheriff receiving a call from the neighbor. I don't think the neighbor is required to say this is a VHR. There's noise coming from that house. The sheriff responds, so it's interesting that some of these things are gonna click off, this is a VHR issue, but noise complaints are above and beyond a VHR. I could have a noise complaint as well, even though I'm not a VHR. So I think that's where we're getting this, we're getting this, what really happens on the ground. Noise complaints, which go directly to the sheriff, they're reported backwards, but that doesn't mean emergency contact, which I'm assuming your emergency
Yeah,
contact.
yeah.
They don't necessarily report to emergency contact, and if the neighbor chooses to go via the sheriff rather than the local contact, there's a gap in the knowledge of homeowners. And again, this isn't blame anybody. This is what it is. And if it does, if we don't do something, and by the way, I'm not saying we should or can, this is just a possibility.
Right, thank you, Keith. Obviously, it came as a surprise to you. So, do either of you have any questions or comments for
I have a
them?
comment, Patty Graff for the record, that I would like to somehow see this process so that the VHR permit holder gets notified rather than months later, it's like, oh, by the way, you have a complaint. I don't think that's fair to the permit holder, because it doesn't give them an opportunity to know what happened.
Right. Well, it leaves them standing like you're standing now with, a gap, or whatever that word is. Lauren?
So I put my annotation in the code discussion, and I think I'm ready to move on
Okay.
with these guys, because we're actually using them to help for our information. This really isn't about your process, and I feel very badly that the two are getting meshed together, so.
So before we vote on this, I need to take public comment.
Oh,
wait,
Oh, sorry.
wow.
See, you did tell me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right. Michael?
May I have a chance to talk, Madam Chair? Thank you so much for coming on in. You were one of the first ones, like Keith was saying, that we went back and forth with, and in fact, as I recall that day, we denied 2 other tier 3s, one across the street at the other address, and then went up the hill. And one of the concerns that we have was that, does this house meet the requirements for a tier 3? And we are all kind of worried about the location, about how close, especially the house behind you was at 40 feet. And so even if there's no deck out to the back, there's a potential for your renters to have open windows in the summertime, or maybe have loud car games or whatever discussions they may have, and voices or noise going that 40 feet to the back of the house. So my question is, you only put the one sound by the driveway, which is close to the deck, right? Right? But nothing else, either in the house or outside the house, or?
We're happy to put in another one, but the corner of the house is actually like, I would say, it's very close to the front deck, but it's also very close to the deck of the neighbors behind. But we can absolutely add more, but I would think that helps because it's like the same side of the house, how it
Is there
could wrap
windows to
around.
the back of the house though, like bedroom windows?
Mhm. Yeah, so we could put them there.
That's
That's
all I'm
easy.
saying, is that noise does travel from within. We've had that at other meetings that we've approved or denied at tier 3. And so I personally would like to see more sound and potentially come back again, but we'll open it up.
Keith?
So it's not a follow-up, it's the same question. We started asking other questions and didn't give you time to answer. These noise monitors are pre-programmed for 75 decibels for 20 minutes, right?
You can set them wherever you want.
You can, but
Yeah.
you didn't change it. That's just kind of the pre-programmed.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is some indication that maybe that's nuisance noise. I'm taking everything into consideration. But here you have an example of someone calling, a sheriff coming, and noise still going on. And I'm wondering if it was loud, quiet for 2 minutes, loud, quiet for 3 minutes, loud. In other words, so that's why I really wanted to know, what did your noise, you obviously did not get an alert from yours. So what does your noise monitor data show at 12:28 a.m. on that date?
I think we can probably pull it up on the phone.
So
Sheriff,
happy to do that.
This is not an inquisition, I'm not holding it against you, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
We're just trying to, again, unfortunately, you're the last person.
Yeah.
We can go on to
Some
public comment. I'm done with
misinformation.
questions, we can answer, we can have a follow-up, they can
Because
come back with
if
it.
she's got to go out to her car and get her computer and hook up to the internet,
let me,
it takes a lot of.
Okay,
let me just try.
No, I'm
try
just saying,
something.
is there an appetite to push this to the next meeting when they have the information specifically that you're asking for? Is that something that I should even be saying out loud?
You can push this, AJ Hames for the record from the Douglas County DA's office, you can push this back another month if you believe that there's more information that you'd like to see that you don't have today, that you can have in a month, that would help you make a decision.
Madam Chair? I'd like the logs.
Okay.
I mean,
Right.
unfortunately for everybody in the room, I'm a CPA. I just like data. And this is real time. I would, if there's a computer file, which I'm almost positive there is, because, these things are designed to do that. Or if my camera's at home, I can email you what time I got home last night. So I'm relatively certain, and I would like to see all the data this camera's collected. And Ernie, if you could, sorry, Mr. Trailer, Dr. Trailer, actually, if you could tell us the specific, I didn't see that information in the pack. If you could just update us, the report's probably confidential, but just the exact specific time and date that the sheriff was standing in there, I'd appreciate that. But I'm okay with.
So,
February 27th at 12:28.
is that in the afternoon or in the middle of the night?
12:28 a.m. It's
Minute.
28 minutes, according to the sheriff. So it's 12:28 a.m. to 2:27:22.
Okay.
He says approximately 12:28,
Okay, we can look for it.
somewhere in there.
So I think to keep us moving along, I believe there's someone here that wants to make public comment, or more than one person possibly. So how about if we take public comment and then we push this decision off? Would we be able to get the information by our next meeting, which is the 14th?
Technically, I could get it in 10 minutes, but.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I have a lot of stuff I want to get through today, and I was hopeful that,
Ernie Strela for the record, their permit expires in a week, so They have to stop advertising if that's the case.
Oh,
And
It's a
I guess
reasonable.
Keith?
we couldn't unilaterally extend their permit 2 months.
Yeah, right.
Do we have that? I mean, couldn't we?
You could.
Yes.
You could do whatever you want.
AJ
Wow,
Haynes from the
that's
DA's
great.
office.
You have power.
What was granted a year ago was a conditional, it was a conditional approval. And so one action that the board could choose to take today would just be to continue to grant them conditional approval, but instead of having that condition be a year, just have it be a month. And you could handle it that way. I would suggest, and we haven't taken public comment, I don't know what motions might be made. If you do make a specific motion for additional information to be provided, then I would suggest that as part of that motion, you specify when and how. Because I think part of the confusion that's led to today was a year ago, when everyone was first getting their toes wet, if that's even an expression.
I
good
think so.
enough for me.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we
We're
understand
gonna
that.
roll with it
It's an old
regardless.
expression,
Yeah.
but okay.
I don't know that there was specificity there, which led to today, the applicants showing up with some paperwork that wasn't provided ahead of the meeting. I think if it's provided ahead of the meeting, then everyone can have a copy of it, and be looking at the same thing. The public can be provided a copy in advance, because the issue is if they show up to the next meeting with the logs, unless we can provide copies to the public at the meeting, we can't really review those during the meeting. So the motion might include the means and the time frame for which they should provide that information.
Then I think if we're going to go that route, maybe we should even push it to January so that there's enough time for them to get the information, because pushing everything out to the public is a longer operation. It has to be out sooner. If that sounds appropriate for all of you, unless you're prepared to make a decision today, but I am not.
I would like to hear public comment, though.
Yeah, well, definitely have to have
Yeah.
public comment. Okay, so we'll take some public comment, and then we'll come back to the board and decide exactly how we want to handle this. Okay, public comment on just 466 Kent Avenue.
Ellie Waller, I had some of the same concerns. This is a complex issue that's evolved over the time, and since you're the first ones through this, I think that the latitude being given is a good idea. With that said, though, with them being the first ones through this entire process, has anything changed, and I'm asking the board or Mr. Strelo, if there is something in the recertification process, as now the dual role of property managers, should they be recertified? Is there enough or no new information that would require recertification? It's just a question, because I've come to every meeting and missed one and still sent in comments, is there's just been so much discussed. Once this goes through this cycle and the code changes, do the tier 3s need to come back because the decibels are gonna change, you're gonna have to, or is a letter gonna go out that says, okay, you guys have the noise monitors, now you gotta change them to 55 if we make a decision on decibels. So there's a lot of unanswered questions in my mind, and just to make it easier for the older tier 3s to understand, they really should follow your process and look at these changes or be notified when the code is changed and readopted. Thank you.
Really? Further public comment on Kent Avenue?
Do I need to sign in again? I don't think I do.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I shouldn't nod.
On the tier 3s, when you're evaluating them, has notices been gone around to the neighbors to let them know that this is being reviewed? To ask them like, we were here a couple of times at other meetings where the neighbors showed up and what, the VHR applicant for the tier 3 said, oh, we don't have any complaints of noise. And the neighbors got notice. And there should be notice to the neighbors saying there's going to be a review of a tier 3 so that the neighbors can then give their input. So I think that the board or the advisory committee should consider that so that you get real input. And if you have a couple of months, should be just maybe 5 houses around or 6 around, let them know that there's going to be a review. They come back in January or whatever the date is. And so the neighbors have a fair opportunity to give you real information. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Mr. Haynes?
AJ Haynes again for the record. I just wanted to jump in. Just on that note, when there is a tier 3 hearing, the county notifies residents via mail. So there's a radius from the house, we draw a circle, and any house that's within that circle gets a letter. In addition, there's notice that's posted at the actual property, and there is a notice that's published in the Record Courier.
Good, thank you. Sorry for speaking when I said I wouldn't. But Kathy Oyster. So the idea of noise bothers me, and I know that the general public probably just calls the police first, because if I hear noise, I'm going to call the police. I'm not going to search out where it came from unless I can see that it's my neighbor and they're in the window. But I may not know they're a rental. That might not be part of what I'm aware of. So, I don't think it's within your authority to educate all of the constituents in Douglas County. So you don't really have that ability. But I did look at that picture, and their noise monitor is at the front of their house on the opposite corner of where the deck is. And if you look at their lot on the ArcGIS map, their house is located on the inside of a curve. So that noise monitor faces, a large curve in the road. Not much of their house is accessible noise-wise as it permeates outward. And I would encourage you, if you are going to extend this, that you require they put noise monitors at the, at least within 10 feet of the deck, or within 6 feet of a window, or try and be specific. Try and make your rules objective. We have everyone put them here, within this limitation, within this location. Don't leave them guessing, but get more data for the January meeting. I looked up average decibels in an indoor arena, and it's 90 without crowd cheering. I was just watching the big game at Autzen Stadium, and they put it up on the TV, and they said, wow, listen to them. It was 87 decibels. So, if it says 70 and my dishwasher running is 54, your 70 is pretty darn loud. Just so you're kind of thinking about that. That's my 2 cents.
Hi, Ben Harmon, State Line. I've spoken to your board remotely a number of times about VHRs in general, to which I'm basically opposed in residential zones. That said, I'm going to set that aside for a moment and talk specifically about this particular one. My observation, I'm sort of watching the board deliberate this issue, I think it's great that you want to get some additional information in order to inform yourselves as to how to accomplish what the previous speaker recommended, which is having hard data and very specific ways in which to allow people to be able to meet your requirements. To me, the request that these folks have to go and get data in order to sort of help you do your job in the future, and having that be something that delays their ability to get their business done doesn't feel really fair to me. That feels like the situation is what it is right now. You have certain criteria by which these people will either meet or not meet the criteria to be a tier 3. Those exist today. I think you should grant the tier 3 to them on the basis of the existing conditions and not use them as a data gathering mechanism for how you're going to go about enforcing things in the future. That doesn't feel fair. So as somebody who's opposed to VHRs, I'm still going to speak on their behalf in this particular capacity.
Thank you. Can you tell me your name again?
Ben Harmon.
Ben Harmon,
State
okay.
Line. Thank you.
Brings up a good point.
My name is Linda Dangler, and I think the real point here is that when we meant the intent of what was our neighborhoods, I had 2 people and 4 people living in the homes near me, 6 people in one large family, and that was it. And we never had noise issues. And only because you have these tier 3s with 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 22 people in them, do we need noise monitors? That in and of itself speaks to the fact that you don't meet the intent of the code. We shouldn't have to have this, and it's only because there are so many people in these VHRs, and their noise projects, and your little circle you draw that's like just these many houses are affected. Where I live at the edge of a canyon, and the canyon goes up and the canyon comes back, and the circle you draw for these houses doesn't touch my house because I don't fit the 100 feet limit or whatever your limit is, okay? But guess what? The sound from every one of those people sitting on those decks, screaming and yelling and partying and drunk, comes to my house. And if you guys would not have tier 3s at all, which would meet the intent of this code, then we could get back to a place where we have the peace and quiet of our neighborhoods and we don't have to worry about noise monitors, which shouldn't have to exist in the first place at all. And if they do have to exist, then they really need to meet the standard. And the cops never come in time, so it doesn't matter how much you turn stuff in. And having to tell the VHR owner that they got dinged, we turn in all kinds of code violations and not one of them is ever violated or dealt with or done. And we are told flat out we can't know the answer. Too bad that you live in this community, you can't know the answer. The only way to get the answer is through a public records request to see if anything's been done. And most generally, it never is. So, I don't know, we just need to not have any of these.
Linda.
Hi, my name is Peter Guilfoyle, and I'm within the circle of noise. And let me tell you something, this property we're talking about here is on Kent. There's already 2 other vacation home rental properties on Kent out of 20 homes. That's 10% of the houses on Kent are VHRs right now. This would increase that number to 15%, which is a very big number in my opinion. I think 5% is a big number, but we could probably tolerate it. But you can see on the circle, across the street, there's been some reference to the house across the street. There's also, down the street, there's another house. And let me tell you, both of those houses are routinely very, very noisy. And where I live down at the end of this cul-de-sac, and this circle of noise goes right through my house, I can hear both of them. And there's, on the one down the street, they're out there on the back porch drinking beer and yelling, and there's a whole bunch of them, okay? And the other one is worse. I mean, and it is, noise monitoring isn't gonna help the situation, okay? And the reason is, if you have a 30-minute sampling rate, you're never gonna detect anything. It's just not gonna happen. You need a 100 microsecond sampling rate to satisfy sampling audio. And I'm an engineer, so that's an accurate number. So I moved there 35 years ago. We didn't have this kind of thing. And this just started happening several years ago. And now when I drive down from my house to Safeway, there's often a party of 10 walking down in the middle of the road to the Safeway. And they're not the kind of people I normally recognize. They're more like casino kind of people that you see downtown. And So the issue of safety I have, I'm worried about my house being broken into, and other issues along those lines. Now, my house is also on a cul-de-sac at a steep angle, so people often get stuck there in the snow. It's Navajo Court. And we have to get them towed out.
30 seconds.
So there's that safety issue, but these people come down there with their sleds and sled down this cul-de-sac, often into my property, which is at the bottom of the cul-de-sac and then down that hill, and that's a safety issue. So I think there's safety issues here. Home valuations are an issue. If you have 15% of the houses on Navajo, what is that?
That, your 3 minutes is up, so if you could just finish your comments, that would be great.
So I see a home valuation issue in the neighborhood in general, and the final issue is equity. If you're gonna let everyone else have their homes rented out, why can't I have mine rented out? Okay, because I'm not really in the business of making you more money on your vacation rental at my expense.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I ask the person a question about the neighborhood, if he's willing to answer? Do you live on Kent Court?
No, I live on Navajo.
Oh, you live on Navajo. So you referenced other homes. Have you specifically heard noise issues from this home that we're looking at today?
I can't say as I have, but I have heard from the other two.
Thank you.
For quite some time.
Okay, that's.
Thank you.
We're just focusing on this house today. Thanks.
Okay, seeing no other public comment, oh, sure.
I was just come here to observe.
How's that working?
I'm third generation here, so his court is right next to the other court. That's probably why he's saying that, speaking on behalf of this particular
Sign your
house.
name and state your name,
Oh,
please, for the
Janet
record.
Murphy for the record. I'm sorry. I've been doing this for how long? I should know better.
You
My system isn't working. I'm sorry. Don't take up my 3 minutes writing my name. No, I'm just kidding. I just have one question, and that's why he's talking about this, is because he lives right next to the court. And that's why he can hear it. You know, 'cause I own rentals there also myself. Mine are full-time rentals. I would, since we're addressing this, and I know I can't talk on any other issue, I'm trying, since I'm here, hey, would you be willing, you know, I run the utility district for 30 years, and my people can't find rentals, full-time rentals. Would you be willing to do a full-time rental with your place? I'm pleading with you. They need full-time rentals. They got families, we need, I can't keep my employees, they're leaving
But
because.
Janet, that's not what
Oh,
we're here
I just
for
want to ask
today.
them. I'm sorry.
So you need to ask them privately.
Okay. I just wanted for the record, just say, look, I'd like for them, this house, if they could, turn into a full-time rental. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Janet. Okay, now I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the board for determination as to what we want to do.
Madam Chair?
Keith?
I realize we didn't frame this very well when we began this conversation because we picked it up when we left the conversation rather than framing it. The code says houses should be in an area so they're not going to create noise, and that's what we've been trying to do, and it is a judgment. I personally, no one else has to, have used a 100-foot rule, and I look at the preponderance of evidence. And I assume if something is less than 100 feet, it could be a noise issue. And if it's more than 100 feet, it doesn't, but neither one of those are absolute. If it's less than 100 feet, I look for other evidence to say maybe it doesn't create noise. If it is more than 100 feet, I look for evidence to say maybe it still creates noise. That's how we got here today. This house is very close to another one. We have another one coming back. I want to stray from this, but my question is always, how can these houses sit so close and not have noise issues? Maybe they screen incredibly well. Maybe there are geology issues. You know, someone mentioned living on a canyon. Also, rock bluffs, can do that. Having these people live in this neighborhood, I also believe, is a significant detriment to noise. First of all, they hear it. But second, their neighbors are probably more tolerant of noise because they know the renter. Most neighbors don't know, they're not neighbors of the owners. That's how we got to noise monitors. Okay? It is, and that is why I'm very interested in, now that we know there's a noise event, what this noise monitor says. I don't know if we want to have discussion or have a motion then discussion, but that's where my head is right now. So while we are using them as a guinea pig, I believe I'm completely okay doing that, because if I didn't, I would deny their permit today. They are very close. There's been a noise event. Because they're so close, I look for evidence to the contrary, substantial evidence that there's not a noise issue. And I don't have that here. But I'm willing to talk about the noise monitoring data and what that's showing us. That's how I can support a deferral of this until we get specific noise monitoring data.
Thank you, Keith. Other comments, Lauren? Oh, Patty?
A short Patty Graff for the record. The one thing that I would like to know is if that complaint came from one of the homes that Keith was talking about that was really close, or was it from, another house that was a little bit further away? We don't have that knowledge. I would like to have them come back with the data and review it and give them an extension before I make a decision on it, because I don't think it was fair to the permit holder not to be notified.
Right. Thank you, Patty. Lauren?
Yep, you guys were kind of the first ones and stuff, and it's been quite a process here, but we are pretty clear, I think, in what constitutes tier 3. I would agree that the 44 feet is too close, and so I'm just like, and Keith puts my thoughts right into words, looking for those things. And one of the things that to me allows it to be okay is that you guys are there. So my thing, which I don't think we were on top of what we need to say, it would be for me a condition that you still live where you live in order for that to be a tier 3. So I have that. I do have concern where maybe we put a monitor somewhere else. I am okay with delaying for a little bit to get that information, and I would be in favor of extending.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. Michael?
Yeah, again, we apologize since you were the first. Knowing what I know now, this is just me speaking, I would not approve of a tier 3 in this neighborhood, not because of your great managers, because I think you are good managers, but since we have conditioned it, I think we need to go along with this process and flesh it out and see where we stand. And I think one of the conditions has to be that all the information needs to go back to Mr. Strelo and not just provided at the podium. Basically, we just need everybody to know it.
Thank you, Michael. Richard, I think you were the only one besides the board that was here for the first ones. Were you on board with the board then?
A year ago?
No.
No, okay. So, and that's some of the complications I think we've been dealing with is now we have a whole team that's dedicated to this that we were just kind of cobbling together then. So my question to the board is, are you looking for one more one-year conditional, or are you looking for just let's put this off till January and giving specific requests of what you want?
Madam Chair, so I'd like to ask a question, because you're bringing up a very valid point. Let's say you have a house that is very noisy, but the neighbors are never there, so you have no complaints. I think we would deny it as a tier 3, unless we had, we would need evidence of that, right? And that's why in the past I voted to have someone come back, because that was my sense, that the house wasn't not noisy, it was just they had no neighbors. But let's say that you had a house which could, because of proximity, create a lot of nuisance, but it doesn't via something. Would you say our role is looking at the house only and its proximity, because if that's the case, I'm with you? Or would we look more broadly at management, living in the neighborhood? You see my question is, I can actually get to where you are. This house could absolutely cause noise problems. And when you read the code, that's actually what it says, right? It doesn't say experience. It says that, the house is situated so that it would not. I don't believe this house is situated so it would not. I just believe it is not. So, do you understand that question? And can you just expand a little bit? So my question is, what happens if you have the worst house, a condo, your next door neighbors, but you never create noise? You only rent to mutes. Yeah? So you never have noise. Tier 3 or not?
You can't base your analysis on that. You have to base your analysis on what is the fact. The fact is where the house is located. So that's where you have to start from, and then you work up or down from there. And that.
I can follow that logic.
That's where we're.
I think each one of our board members have their own way of building how they think something is appropriate or not. And I don't think that we need to be in agreement on that, because I think it's good that we don't, that we can talk about all the issues. The question I'm asking is, where do you want to go from here? Do we want to give them, I'm talking about you like you're not even in the room, and I apologize for that, but it's really rude. Do you want to give the permit holders here another couple of months? Do we want to give them one more year of a conditional permit, have them come back with the appropriate paperwork turned in advance so it's in our packets and it's public record? What do you as a board want to do? Michael?
I would like to give them another year, but I'd like to be able to review not just noise, just if there's any complaints that come up. And by the way, they need to be notified if complaints come up. I'm willing to give them another year.
And it seems to me any conditional permit should have that. They should be notified if something comes up when it's a conditional permit. Yeah. But I don't know how the wheels work behind the scenes always. So, okay, thank you, Michael. Keith, what is your?
Well, let me say this. I'm not unopposed to an extension. I think a year is awfully long. I'm disappointed that they were told to provide data, and instead we got at the podium. And maybe that's our lack of communication, right? So we need to take part of that. While I agree they should have been notified, it would not have remediated this, because they're never going to be notified to correct it when you call the police. That process is not going to exist, right? They're going to be notified for informational purposes so they can take it into account on future renters and everything else, but they're never going to be notified. It is not the population's job to notify the local contact. If there is a noise complaint, they should be able to and are able to notify the police. My concern right now is I'm leaning to what Michael said. We need to look at the house and not the experience, because the code says the house, the geography around it. And because of that, I won't say likely, because I change my mind every time someone else talks, but I am leaning towards disallowing this permit. I don't think another year is appropriate. I think at max 4 months, and they need to provide they need to install noise monitors on their house closest to that 40 house. And we need to see that data, and I believe they need to give Ernie that data 20 days before the meeting so that he can send it. I don't know if we have an electronic system. How do you give an electronic file to the public? Can you, AJ, do you understand my comment? I'd like to see the data, and maybe you can blow it up and just give me so many reams of paper that will work, but I don't know what to, we want to be very specific. I think before January meeting, at the January meeting, we need to be in a position, and by the way, I'm not adverse in that January meeting to saying we're not gonna approve your permit, but you've got rentals, and we're gonna give you 6 months to wind them down. I'm not opposed to that in January, but I'm opposed to a year.
Okay, Patty?
Keith brought up some good points, but I'm more inclined to give them a conditional 1 year and let them provide all the documents.
Lauren? No comment?
No comment.
Okay. I'm inclined to give them another year as under the conditions that Keith has brought up, because I do think they're good property managers, and I do think that it's been at their expense that we have been learning the ropes. And I don't think that's fair to the permit holders. And I think we have to find that balance of what's fair to the residents and what's fair to the permit holders. And there's a lot of discretion that Mr. Strelo has to make adjustments to permits if there are egregious problems and issues. And I know that he is not afraid to use his power. So I'm comfortable with giving a 1-year conditional permit. So that said,
Can I-
who's
Can I,
Mr. Strelo?
Ernie Strelo for the record, so when you do your motion, please be very clear.
That's,
Even if it means take a break and write it out and read it. Because one of the things that we had with this particular instance, it took us a week to try to decipher what you guys motioned. Right, we had a band of people at director level, the county manager. We're trying to understand what you guys motioned. So if you could be very clear, if you're conditioning it for a year or 3 months or whatever you're doing, be very specific about what you want them to provide us and how you want to provide it, right? So I know what you want me to do. Because that's why they brought stuff here, because I didn't know, am I supposed to get stuff ahead of time? I didn't know how you guys wanted to see it. So, thank you.
then let's just take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene at 2:20 and one of us will write a motion.
I gotta get my glasses, I can see them.
So who's writing the motion?
You took the word out of my mouth. I was gonna say,
I'm kind of going on here, conditional 1 year.
to order.
We need a bell.
Oh, I know, I need a bell. And all 5 of our members are here, so we will go back on the record, and I'm going to start with Mr. Hames.
AJ Haynes from the DA's office. I just wanted to make a record. During the break, I was having a conversation with Chairwoman Hempler regarding motion. Then the conversation shifted to noise monitors generally, just discussing what a noise monitor could or couldn't measure, decibel levels, things of that nature. There was no real specific deliberation regarding this particular application, but as our conversation continued, additional board members came over, and it got to the point where it began to seem as though we might be deliberating concerning this particular application. And so because it was a related topic and because a quorum had sort of formed around us, we went ahead and we stopped the conversation at that time and ceased any further discussion of noise monitors or this application, and then thought that this might be an opportunity to instead continue on with the open meeting that we had previously been having.
Thank you, Mr. Hames. Okay, so the way we left it was we were going to present a motion on a conditional permit for this, I believe. Should I give the motion?
Did you want to have any further discussion
With the
regarding
board?
noise monitors or noise in code or anything like that?
There was some questions as to, right now the code is not clear on noise monitors. So for us to condition things that aren't in code might be, it might be the wrong time to do that till we codify some of the things that we're looking at for recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. But I would like to go forward if we can on this issue so that the McNamara's can know where they stand. So I think that Mr. Lauritsen, you had some remarks that you were starting to make to us about how the code reads right now on noise.
That's correct. Richard Lauritsen for the record. So the way noise reads right now, it's read as CNEL, which means community noise equivalent over time. So you made a reference of 75 decibels, correct? So if you take 75 decibels and you divide it by 24 hours, it comes out to be 3.162. Very, very minimal. In code, it reads that outside noise cannot exceed 75 CNEL. Inside code reads it cannot exceed 34 CNEL. So what is the problem here is this gray area, because you're talking decibels and the code reads CNEL. Because originally the code was developed for machinery in the valley over a 24-hour period. That's the way the code was read. It wasn't developed for vacation home rentals. So that's where the confusion is, and Ernie and I are working towards changing this so it is decibels. But we're not there yet. So that's where the confusion is where we're trying to make a ruling based upon noise. That's not really fair to you because the code doesn't read that way. And code enforcement, I can't do anything if it's not supported in code. If this isn't supported in code, so it's a moot point.
Thank you. Perhaps that makes the motion easier. Is someone prepared to give a motion? I have some notes on the things. Patty?
Yeah, Patty Graff for the record. I make a motion that the Tier 3 conditional for 1 year be given at 466 Kent Avenue, Zephyr Cove, Nevada, with the owner installing a
Excuse me. With the following conditions.
with the following conditions. Noise monitor installed at a location where the closest neighbor is. And upon renewal of the permit, that they provide monthly noise monitor data showing noise increments in 5 minutes rather than 20 minutes.
Can I add to her motion or no?
She's made her motion.
Okay.
You could propose an amendment and she could choose to make it.
Okay.
But
Right now, you need a second, right?
yeah, you need to make progress on this current
Okay.
motion before.
Okay, so, so we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second to that motion?
I would like to amend it, so how would I go about that? Do I
Make the second.
and then amend it?
Yeah, I was asking the same
You could-
question, so.
You could either do that or you could not second it, the motion would die, and you could make your own motion.
No, I'll second it, because I don't want to repeat that, and then and make an amendment if I could.
Okay,
Okay, my amendment would be not to strike the location nearest the other house, but to, at the direction of the project director.
program
Install-
manager.
Install, program director, sorry.
Manager.
Program
manager.
At the direction of the program manager where to install additional devices. Because, I mean, it's hard for us to say where to put it without us being there.
Now, can I make a further amendment to his amendment?
It has to be seconded first, I think.
First Patty would have to agree to
Okay.
the amendment, seconding the amendment essentially.
Okay, so Patty,
I second, I agree to it and second it.
okay,
So that's now you have a motion, which as I understand it is a 1-year conditional permit that noise monitors be installed at the discretion of the program manager. That they provide at the time of renewal monthly noise monitor data, and that they set noise events at 5 minutes. Is that an
Correct.
accurate statement of the motion as you understand it?
Yes.
and my amendment would be with proof of compliance to the VHR program manager on or before November 1st of 2023. That would be a month before their 1 year would be up. So that's my amendment. Is that, oh, yeah, you have to approve it.
Would that, question, would that give Ernie enough time to get it on the public 1 month? Or should it be required 2 months prior?
Ernie Strelo for the record. So I'm trying to make sense of the motion in itself. So we're asking for monthly noise monitoring information. Is that upon renewal? This?
I think the amendment,
This-
AJ Haynes for the record, the amendment is that instead of upon renewal, we're substituting in by November 1st, 2023.
Okay, I heard monthly before that. So that's
It would
being
be monthly
substituted.
data that would be submitted to
Monthly data,
you
okay.
on by November 1st, 2023.
That's understandable in a 5-minute increment.
Right, that's in
Right.
there.
So that, yeah, because normally your permit expires December 10th, I believe, or December something, right?
No, it's October 12th or 13th.
Oh, so it's already expired.
Well, no, we had put everything in, but now we were waiting.
Okay, so, no, then it should be 30 days prior to a renewal.
Okay, well, you
I
would.
have to look at the renewal dates, I don't remember.
Why don't we just say August?
Just say August.
I just picked that date because I heard you say a week. So,
Why don't we just say 30 days prior to renewal?
perfect.
That'll have to give us.
Okay, so my amendment would be with proof of compliance to the VHR program manager 30 days prior to renewal date.
Let me ask you this. Which renewal date? Is it the year existence or their date that they get renewal? Their date that they get renewal, not our extension.
No, we're, we're extending them for a year.
Right, so is it 30 days prior to that year end, or 30 days prior to when their permit is due?
I think they intended to extend their current permit a year, not a year from today's date.
Right.
Bernie Strelo, for the record, my understanding would be 30 days prior to the expiration of the permit in 2023,
Correct.
Okay.
right? Whatever
Says
date that is.
Whatever
That's
day
my
that is,
intention.
yeah. Okay,
Simple.
Okay.
Do you agree with that?
I
So
agree
that's-
with that.
That's
I can do
the
that.
amendment that was proposed,
Yes.
and that's agreed to.
Yes.
Yes.
So that is the current state of the motion, a one-year conditional permit, which will expire on the date that's written on the permit. That there be conditions placed upon it. One, that they would have noise monitors installed at the discretion of the program manager. Two, that they would provide monthly noise monitor data in 5-minute increments. And 3, that information be provided to the program manager 30 days prior to the permit renewal date. Is that an accurate
Correct.
statement of the motion?
You do good work.
So now I need a second to that motion, is that correct?
You've proposed an amendment, which she's accepted and seconded.
And
So that's-
seconded.
That is the motion.
And now we vote.
So now we can
Well,
vote.
we can discuss, right?
You can
Oh, we
discuss
can
it at this
discuss and
time.
Because
vote, right.
the reason I want to discuss is because you're about to hear this again, right? Because we're about to go through the code.
Yep.
In the code, F2 says, and I'll tell you, no matter what I want to say, I can make it say that, because there's all this others, right? I just reread this because I wanted to see the answer to my question. Is it the unit, or is it the unit plus management, right? And so the unit is located sufficiently far away from other residential buildings so as not to create a nuisance. Sufficiently far depends on the facts specific to location, including surrounding building density, the space between adjacent homes, terrain, the existence of sound barriers such as berms, foliage, and rocks, as well as other factors. We don't vote. The advisory board deems appropriate, given the circumstances, unique to each location, right? I can read that it's a building, and I can read it's a building plus the management. I intend to vote no. I hope you vote yes. But I think when we get to this chapter, we all need to think about it. And even if it's like put a placeholder here and come back to it, we need to decide if a bad building with great management is a tier 3. Is it building and management, or is it only building? The reason I'm voting no is I believe the county commissioners, what they heard before, it was about the building. The building couldn't possibly create an issue. That's what was in there. I think that was the spirit of this. So that's why I'm going to vote no, but I'm not disappointed if the rest of you vote yes.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right. All those, I'm not going to repeat that motion, but all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay,
Or nay, I guess.
4-1, thank you. All right. Thank you for your patience. We will move on. And don't feel like you have to sit through this if you don't want to. I mean,
She had a
you-
quick question.
You won't hurt our
Judge, I don't know if
feelings.
this or not.
For clarifications, just on how you want certain things presented, I would be reaching out to you.
Yes,
you
ma'am.
know? Just
I
as
will
far
be
as
your point of contact.
decibels versus CNRAs or whatever it was, I want to make sure I have the right.
I lead the program. I will be your contact.
Awesome, thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Okay, for possible action. Discussion on possible changes to Chapter 20.622 of the Douglas County Code relative to VHRs in the Lake Tahoe Township. So we're back to business here. This time, we are going through the code, starting from the beginning. And as you saw in the packet, the red lines are things we've already come to consensus on. Purple lines are things that we have discussed. And Mr. Hames has put into more of a legal type verbiage for us. And it was time for us to go through them all and see where we want to make proposed changes.
Are you
Um,
taking public discussion?
Proposed recommendations, apologize,
Okay.
recommendations.
Are you taking public discussion on this?
We will, after we have our discussion, yes. Mr. Stralo's gonna facilitate this for us so that we can move along in a better manner than what we just did. And hopefully get through some of the code today. So if you look at page 164 of your packet, that is where the red and purple lines are. And I don't really need this anymore.
I'm sorry, are you on the supplemental or the regular?
Regular.
I'm on the regular.
164?
The
We have a
packet.
little barcode in the back, you can, if you can't, if you
And-
can pull it out.
You know, it begins with the introduction, which
Got it.
I don't
Okay,
see
gotcha.
anything on, and I
I
don't
do.
know if any of this board
Yes.
had any comments to make about the introduction, so
Yes.
let's start from there.
On the introduction?
Yes?
That's,
Okay.
hey,
You want me to go?
I don't have any notes on that, so you go
I
right
am-
ahead and
I
let's
I just need to set up, Lauren Romaine for the record, number 4, and I can't read it and let it go without making a comment. So at the end, it says, "The board finds that Lake Tahoe Township is the only appropriate and logical choice for the operation of short-term vacation rentals, and they will be permitted and regulated as set forth in this chapter." I cannot disagree with that more. The task force recommended that we put them in the valley also. So I just want to make a note of my objection to the way in which this is worded. And we can put a placeholder there and move on, but
That's interesting, because I called it the elephant in the room.
it is the elephant in the room, and I'm learning from Keith to just verbalize it, so.
Okay, so Ernie, I think that's something that should go on the parking lot,
Okay.
because I don't think it's something that needs to be dealt with today.
Correct.
Madam Chair? So we will, we'll reach a consensus about what, we're just gonna take Lauren's comment and he'll go and come back, or we ought to reach a consensus about what it should say.
I don't want to slow the process today.
Well,
It's
because
just-
again, it's almost like we're forcing something irrational here. Why wouldn't the market determine where VHRs are appropriate? So why, in your committee, why was it only East Fork? Eagles and Ags, Eagle and Ag, or whatever that thing is. I've got a house I'd like to rent out for Eagles and Ag. Why does the we are, and by the way, there's a little thing coming back at it. If it's good for us, why isn't it good for the valley, right? So if I've got to put up with it, why doesn't the valley have to put up with it? Is tourism really today only in Lake Tahoe Basin? There are off-road trails, there's plenty of things to do. In fact, they publicize them. I've seen brochures about things to do in the valley. So what is the logic of not having the free market decide where VHRs are going to be allowed, other than it's a reason that the whole county would vote to not have VHRs?
So can real quickly?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I brought it up because it got bastardized in the process. The task force recommended them in the valley, although they only recommended a few. I don't want to stop the process today because we are tilting at windmills with that statement.
Agreed.
I just cannot go by it without making a statement. And I think we have bigger fish to fry, so I'd rather stick it there and move on.
Sounds good.
Okay?
And I don't disagree with you, Lauren. As everyone knows, I was on the task force, and we fought to make it fair that if there was 12% of the homeowner units up here for VHRs, there should be 12% of the homeowner units down there to be VHRs. It's probably a little less because at the time it was 725 or some number like that up here, and that was roughly 12% of the housing units. Just to give you a little background information, but I don't like to really dwell on the task force because that ship sailed a long time ago and we're trying to move forward, but we do want to get back to that at some point.
Sorry.
And because there's been a resident outcry about that, about the fairness of it, and it needs to be discussed.
What conflicts with 7?
And I guess my other one last part to that is, and I don't know that there's anything we can do about this either, but Parks and Rec for Douglas County gets X amount of dollars, and it gets spread between the whole county, not Tahoe Township, which is bearing the burden and brunt of all of this program. So,
listening to me.
well, because I'm trying to work out some other things and I can't seem to get them done.
No,
So
that-
it's a little frustrating, and I'm done off my soapbox.
Well, you took my soapbox away.
Sorry.
Good for you.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments on the introduction before we move to 020 definitions?
Nope.
Okay, if you'll look at page 165, we've got local contact person that has been cleaned up. And I'll just very quickly say that on 166, on the top line, it says Douglas County or the jurisdictional boundaries of the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. That's kind of it's not the right wording because TRPA is around the entire lake. So if you're in Kings Beach, you're probably not 30 minutes away. So I think we need to talk about the or part of that. Moving along, I'm going to shut up.
No, I'm not saying moving along, because
No,
we
I-
do need to fix that.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
then the other thing is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
So do you want to remove TRPA then? Or how did you want that to read?
Well, I think TRP&A need to, I'm in a public forum, I have to be more careful.
You did want to stop it located in Douglas County.
Douglas County, right.
In the stop.
Well, no,
Or,
you have
or
to be
within 30 minutes.
minutes.
So it could be in this.
Whichever is less.
Leave the 30 minutes, get rid of TRPA as a jurisdictional boundary, because like she's saying, Kings Beach is an hour away.
Right.
That gets rid of, that doesn't help us with the
Yeah.
30 minutes.
So the or is just an incorrect.
If I may, AJ Hames from the DA's office for the record. Further down, it still does say that the local contact person must reside or work near the vacation home rental such that, at least that's the proposed language, the response time to the VHR from the local contact person residence or primary place of business is not more than 30 minutes. So it's another condition that's added on further down. One, they would have to live or work either within Douglas County or the TRPA boundaries. And then two, they have to be within 30 minutes. But if the board believes that that is confusing, then it might be easier to move the 30-minute requirement up next to Douglas County.
Lauren?
Okay, so I also want to make sure that the 30-minute requirement applies to owners, because at the bottom it says an owner may designate him or herself as a local contact person. So the 30 minutes has to apply also to owners. Has to apply also to owners. So anyone who considers themselves a local, I'm wondering if we can call it local emergency contact, because local sounds like it's no big deal. And then your business and place of residence must be within 30 minutes. There is no time that a local emergency contact person should ever be outside of that 30 minutes allowable time, whether they work or live.
Good pickup.
Madam Chair.
Michael?
Well, I did have a comment. So suppose you do have a property in Lower Kingsbury and you're in El Dorado County as the local contact. That's within 30 minutes. So that's not a problem the way you read it right here. Okay.
The way I don't know how it's read here, but.
Madam Chair, I think we're getting beyond what we need. They need to live within 30 minutes of this. And I don't care where your business is. The fact that you have a business here, but you live somewhere else, doesn't make you a great local contact. So I think they need to reside within 30 minutes of the unit. I don't care if it's El Dorado County, I don't care where it is. I think it's always 30 minutes. I don't see why place of business, because what I've always asked several times, they had a place of business here, but we never really were sure where they lived.
Okay, so my place of business is, I'm sorry, Lauren, for the
Lauren.
record, sorry. All right. I work shift work at a hospital in Reno, and I'm a local emergency contact because I reside here. Not okay.
Okay, then that's your employment, not your place of business.
However you want to word it.
Okay.
But whoever is going to be the local emergency contact needs to live and work within 30 minutes of their VHR.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
But what I've seen is, I've got a management company.
Right.
The management company's on Lake Tahoe Boulevard, so
Yeah.
it looks good to us, but we have no idea where they live. And so that's why, but yes, if you want to say you live and work within 30 minutes of the unit, I'm great with that. But the problem with place of business, we have property managers with a place of business, but we don't know where the local contacts actually are living. And by the way, it could be 5, right? Because we tend to get 1 on the permit, but we know there could be a handoff of these phones. So the local contact, and I don't know why we got to complicate it even more than that. The local contact, and by the way, I didn't like the emergency part. You tended to, but I'm okay with calling it, because to me, it's just a local contact. Emergency made it sound like I shouldn't call them unless someone's going to die. So I think that's just how we are doing it. So I'm okay with a local emergency contact. But to me, they live and work within 30 minutes of the unit. Take out TRPA, take out everything else. They live and work within 30 minutes of the unit.
Okay. Patty, do you have any comments on that one?
I think it would really uncomplicate a lot of this by just going with what Keith said.
Okay, Michael?
I agree, keep it short.
Yeah. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Just to kind of explain where this all even came from. So throughout the code as it currently stands, there's numerous references to a local contact. Emergency contact is actually not used throughout the code. It's in the definitions, but that's about it. So what this is, it's kind of combining all of those definitions into at least one section. And I guess what I'm hearing from the board is, that's great, but it should be even more condensed and simplified to just 30 minutes, live and work.
Yep, and it's always local emergency contact.
Look,
I didn't like emergency until you said you did like it, then I saw I like it now. So
Okay, how about
local emergency
local
contact.
or?
I'm fine, but the only problem with that, I'm sorry, I'll remain for the record, is I just feel like local contact just means, oh, you want to call me every once in a while, fine. Emergency, to me, and maybe emergency is not the right word, but it means I have to be there to respond for.
How about immediate agent or something? I mean, maybe we take that, maybe we change the phrase completely, because,
Management contact.
well, management maybe imply a company, but
I'm
what
fine.
we're taking is somebody who has the authority, right?
Yeah, it's
So they're the
local
other-
contact, but how about if we make sure that they are required to respond? That makes, as long as that wording is very clear and concise within underneath the local contact, that they must respond within, and have respond within 30 minutes and have a resolution to the complaint within an hour. And as long as that, I think if we clear this up and make that more important, then you'll understand as the local contact that I have to be able to respond. So I'm good with
And
that.
understanding there's many times more than one local contact. Yeah, okay.
And so maybe this is a question for council. I believe we ought to have the right to suspend local contacts and management companies, which I don't believe is currently. I'm assuming there's a better place than the definition to put that.
Make a note of it.
So if a local contact, for example, is
So-
found to be very bad at their job.
Well, so you heard County Commissioner Gardner say, I called and I'm the maid, I don't do that.
Yes.
She's now suspended.
That would be something that the program manager could,
Has to,
in his
yeah.
discretion,
Right. Would that go in the
say this
definition or is
person
that
no
somewhere later
longer,
on?
it would go somewhere else.
Okay, sorry. Okay. I just didn't, I want to make sure I didn't pass my choice, my chance here. Okay.
Okay.
Now, just to ask you, Mr. Hames, if we come to a consensus, do we want to vote on things in chunks like this? I don't think I want to, because that's too much chunkiness.
Yeah, it creates a,
Yeah.
no, we can have a discussion, what, AJ
So-
Hames for the record, I would suggest that we have a discussion, we try to reach a general consensus during the discussion, but no specific motions, and then what you can do at the end, if you choose, is make a motion that the county present a red line consistent with the discussions during this meeting.
Okay, that's what I was hoping you would say. Okay, so if we're finished with A, does anyone have any angst with B?
Yes.
Well, okay.
Lauren Romaine, for the record, is there a way we can change that from overnight? Because overnight used to be an occupancy thing, but this is really quiet hours at this point. Quiet hours are 9 to 8 a.m. for the purpose of this chapter only. And really overnight has no more relevance. Or hopefully will not have any more relevance.
Let's see. Would you like me to?
You
just
can either
review
delete
and
it,
check
or
it?
either delete it, or make it quiet hours, which is what it's really pertaining to now. But
So currently in the code, overnight is used in terms of lodging. A VHR is defined as a unit that's rented during an overnight period. So that it is used once there.
Okay.
I'm just providing
Yep,
information.
yep.
Overnight occupancy is used a few times, as you've indicated.
which
You've
we're
already-
talking about taking that out.
Overnight.
We haven't yet, but
Limit overnight occupancy. Overnight occupancy.
Perhaps we could change this to quiet hours, and in the statement about overnight renting, we could just not use a defined term, right?
Right.
And you can use the word overnight there and not define it.
Right.
Yeah, I think we could put something together to that effect.
Okay.
I think you're right. The only significant time overnight is used within the current code is for the
Occupancy.
VHR definition. Otherwise, it's all for the 50% occupancy, which you've already voted to recommend getting rid of.
And can I ask that we all state our names when we
Yeah,
start
I'm
speaking?
sorry.
Because it makes Katie's life very difficult doing our minutes.
Sorry.
And I guess that goes for me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So are we clear on overnight?
Yep.
Okay. So on C, that went away, it looks like. Went to C. C comes down here, okay.
C and
So
D are
C and D are combined. So I wonder what I had here. Oh, I resolved my problem. Does anybody have anything on the definition of owner?
Yes.
Does
Owner.
anyone
No,
else?
not on owner. No, I don't have anything on C. I'm sorry.
Okay, D, rent. Okay,
D, yes.
D, rent, you do have something?
No.
You're on the blue line, page
No.
166?
Well, I am and I'm not, because I didn't have this. Our
Okay.
Lauren Romaine, for the record, I didn't have this at the time. I put my notes in. No, I don't need a third version. So I have two versions, and I'm trying to work through both of those. So one has my comments and one is the
Okay,
yes.
well, I mean.
Unfortunately, I made my comments of the Word version you sent, so
Yeah.
I'm
I
in a
know.
different.
Well,
version.
yeah, because I,
When you get to person, let me know.
Well, there is no person, I guess, anymore. That's where I was too.
there's no person.
Okay, can you look in what you,
Person means, and that was part of C, that was melded together with D. So
So
that would be, Keith, where you probably want to be.
okay, so I
Person
have a
means.
comment there. I have no understanding of why occupy is there. Because remember, we found some person who was renting houses and VHRing them illegally because they couldn't get them. But this implies that occupying something is important. So a person means an individual family, including a family trust, which owns the VHR property. Occupies, they could or they could not occupy, and it says or. So just because you occupy something doesn't mean you're a person. Well, as you're a person, but you're not a person in this context.
AJ Haynes, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
That was part of the reason why the suggestion here on page 166 of the packet is to
Read it,
combine
Jim. I don't think he
owner
has it
and
all.
person. So as proposed, we would eliminate person as a definition so that later on in the code where it says no person or no individual, that's just the common sense understanding of what a person is. Because currently, as you've stated, person means someone who either owns or occupies.
Yeah.
And it excludes anyone who does neither. So those people are not persons, which makes no sense.
Yeah, but, okay, so now if I understand right from looking at what I'm saying, so owner means an individual or family, including family trust, which holds legal or equitable title, I'm with you, or occupies a VHR property. What in the world does occupy the property have to do with ownership?
That part, you could propose to get rid of that part.
Yeah.
My main concern, because this is a revision that I had suggested, was what you were addressing before, where you've got portions of the code that say people can't do this, and then we have a definition of person, which excludes most people, which is nonsensical.
So I recommend we remove or occupies from this sentence.
I give you, if I can.
Go ahead. For the record, your name for the record.
First, for the record, Todd Douglas Fire. So where that kind of comes into play in real life is there is homes that I've gone and inspected in Todd Douglas Township that are primarily rented by one person. They're not the owner, they rent it, they've got permission from the owner to rent the house, or to then Airbnb like one bedroom out of it.
I was,
So.
And so the renter is applying.
That's a thing?
No.
That is a thing, that does actually happen. They
So-
are people with current permits.
So I
they've
rented
been
the house for a
given-
year, I'm gonna Airbnb it, but I am, as the rentor, allowed to.
You have to.
Get the permit.
My understanding is the county has made it so that they have to have something in writing from the owner of the home saying that they're allowing this to happen, but that has happened. And it's more on like the tier 1 level that I've seen.
I understand I understand the reason for the wording now, thank you very much.
Okay, no, don't go there. We're talking about the wording. And
I am talking about the wording.
Keith's right.
Yes, what?
Thank you for that, but that's for somewhere else. That a rental, person that's renting can rent.
So
that-
a lot of places have it in the world, it's called subletting.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So I'm just,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Lauren.
go ahead.
AJ Haynes from the DA's office for the record. I think part of this concern is also addressed in section 030A. The language there, an owner of a vacation rental may not rent. The suggestion is to change that to simply, it is unlawful to rent, which would therefore include anyone who is not an owner.
So it's in a different section, and it's something we should discuss when we get to that paragraph, correct? Or no?
You're gonna have to go slower for that, because I didn't.
Okay.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay, so I understand that under the definite, Lauren Romaine for the record, I understand that for the definition of owner, what Keith is saying does not apply. However, I do not want the opportunity to address these things that are happening that we do not want to happen in the future part. So I'm okay with taking this part out of ownership, but somewhere we need someone to put a bookmark in it that we address how many separate groups of people we allow to occupy a VHR when it's being rented. So as long as that's bookmarked somewhere.
Well, Ernie, maybe you could put that on the parking lot for,
Tell me what you want me to write?
So somewhere in here, we need to ensure that we address the multitude of groups of separate individuals who occupy what is considered to be one unit. But I'm okay with giving it up with the definition of ownership. I just don't want the opportunity to pass that we need to fix that issue.
You learned something new, if you keep your eyes, I had no idea that was legal. I honestly don't. Maybe it's okay. But if we're gonna keep the concept that I can lease long-term to someone, and then they get a permit to VHR, we need to prescribe that acknowledgement. Because when I find someone $20,000 who rents and they run away, I assumed we could put a lien against the property. and now I don't know if we can. So I don't know where you guys are. We can leave this till later. I just had no concept I could rent something long-term in VHR. I just never clicked into that. So I'm sure it's somewhere else. And so maybe we need to put or occupies, but maybe it ought to be rents instead of occupies, because occupy is a weird word. Maybe we can say rents. I don't know if you guys are okay with renting something for a year and VHRing it. If you are, let's figure that out now and keep it in here. And if you're not, take it out.
You know, earnings trailer for the, right now, we're not approved, I have not had a renewal come up where there's somebody subletting the property for a VHR. I don't recall that coming up at all. We've had illegal ones come up, and we've actually had problems in our code on enforcing that, right? So.
If I could speak, so currently our code says that if you want to obtain a VHR permit, you must be an owner. And then there's just
you're defining owner, someone who occupies.
Yeah, so there's just, that's part of what we're trying to clean up a little bit.
Okay, so we can take occupy out.
Yes.
Take occupy
Yes,
out.
and it's bookmarked that we will, Lauren Romaine for the record, we will, bless you, we will address this when we get there, because it is a serious thing.
Okay. So, are we good now with the definition of C that went into D, which is owner means an
No.
individual or family?
No.
You have more comments on that?
Lauren
Okay.
Romaine for the record. So I have to admit, being on this board and this closely held limited liability company, I just needed to ask, are you all happy with that? Because I don't understand it, nor do I really care to, because as long as you guys are happy with it and it does what you need it to do, then I'm fine.
Are
If there's
we you
clarity.
guys or are they
These
you
guys.
Ken,
Yeah.
Patty Graff for the record. On the VHR permit, to protect myself legally, I put the property in an LLC, because if I got sued, they could only sue that property. They could not come after my primary residence. And I held the LLC 100%. So it was a way for me to legally protect myself.
Right.
So I would recommend that that's.
I'm just saying the terminology, I'm sorry,
What?
Lauren Romaine, the terminology. Is the terminology where you want it to be, and does it do what you want it to do? And if you're happy with it, I'm happy with it.
Mr. Hames.
AJ Hames for the record. Closely held's a term of art, it's a legal term. It basically just means private, not public, it's not a publicly traded company. And then small, usually family. And so just in very general terms, that's what it means, and that's how we've been interpreting it, and that's how Ernie's been enforcing it. Is
Madam Chair, but we've already had an appeal because someone bought an LLC.
Right.
Right? I bought the LLC still owns it, the permit was indeed transferred. And maybe, remember the one, and
Right.
it was close, but are we getting into?
That particular property was under the previous
Okay,
ordinance
yeah.
before the settlement was
Yeah,
made,
okay.
and we were under the current ordinance.
Okay.
So I don't know that we're bound to this language, but it was
This is
part
Ernie
of.
Strelo for the record. I'm sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair. Just to answer that particular LLC was, had more to do with emails internally that permitted it, that shouldn't have permitted it, and so we had no choice, right? And so that's not normal. That hasn't come up again. So it's closely held, for corps and LLCs. It's usually husband and wife, and husband and wife, somebody in the same family. in
But
the same
but
house.
the LLC being closely held, all right, so here's my question. I have an LLC, I own 100% of it. I sell it to somebody else.
Change
The
the
LLC is still closely held. The LLC is still the owner. Is there wording in here that would clearly state that when I transfer control, and by the way, let's not pretend ourselves that investors aren't here. I don't want to take your VHR away, but you want to sell it, let me buy 45% of it. That's a transaction, right? In fact, I think I've seen some of those. So when you're going to define closely held, don't you need to also define transfer? To me, the only people the county commissioners intended to be able to assume ownership and not lose a permit is a family trust.
This one, E1.
It wasn't, I'd like to invest in your property. You want to sell because you need a little cash, don't sell, keep your permit, I'll buy 10% of your business.
So Ernie Strayland for the record, so the intent, what we've been using it for, 'cause we use this a lot, right? There's a lot of LLCs out there, right? So in trust. And so we asked for all the paperwork for those LLCs and trusts. On the LLCs, and we've had one court to come up, we've looked at the ownership structure within the house, where they live, if they live together, if they don't. If they don't live in the same household, that's the only definition that we have to go by, on the closely held side. So if they have an LLC and they're living in the same house, it's a legal LLC.
Okay.
If it's, Intel buys it, it's not closely held anymore. If you buy it, and you buy it, with other family that don't live in the same household, it'll change from closely held to a non-closely held LLC, and it would be denied.
Yeah.
Now,
I guess what I'm saying
notification may not happen right away, though. That's a good point.
So my question, I guess, to council is the wording, we know what we want, is the wording tight enough here that if anyone appealed, I think Ernie is implementing this as it was intended.
Mm-hmm.
Does the wording, and maybe this is a parking lot issue where you guys need to look at that just as a concept so we can move on. You need to look at LLCs and change of ownerships and closely held and make sure that what the intent you're enforcing is actually enforceable in the code.
AJ Haynes, for the record. I think that would be an edit if we were going to make that kind of a change. It would go into section 030 permit process, subsection E1, which currently includes the prohibition against transfer.
Okay.
So we could beef up that portion of the prohibition just to clarify that an LLC can't be transferred.
So
Can we
can
put that on
I
the
think
list?
we'll just put it.
That's what I mean, can we
That's
do
good.
that, punch that in right now so we don't
Yeah, you can do
forget? Okay, so, persons, rent. Are we still on persons? Michael, you have anything on that? Okay, so moving on, we'll go to rent. Anybody, does anyone have any comments on that? That's pretty plain and simple. Bedroom, E. Lauren,
Oh, Michael, go.
you're not going yet? Oh, Michael.
Well, my only
Sorry.
point is we've struggled with this on many different applications. And should the word permanent bed be in there that's describing what a bedroom is? Because right now, there's nothing in there that says you need to have a bed to make it a bedroom. Right? And I just think it'd be good, somewhere in there, put every bedroom must, have a permanent bed to make it a bedroom.
Okay,
I'm open to staff working on that.
yep, punching away. Lauren? Connie, I can't see you, so if I don't call on you, do
She'll
something.
do something.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if, per the real estate law, you cannot advertise a room as a bedroom without a closet. And I've seen places where back behind a bedroom, they have, maybe it was a closet, and so then they, you have to go through this bedroom in order to get there, and I just think when the impetus or when the desire is to make all kinds of rooms into bedrooms so you get higher occupancy, I just think that what we're talking about doing is melding more with the community. I don't know how many people who live here full-time live in a bedroom that doesn't have a closet. And to me, it solidifies and makes it more of a substantial bedroom versus all of these kind of, I love nooks and crannies. So I would suggest that we also require it has a closet.
So, Bernie Strayla for the record. So I've had this conversation with the Director of Community Development, Mr. Delaire, about that. And county code doesn't currently require a closet as defined as a bedroom in Douglas County.
And there's a lot of things that Douglas County's code does not help a lot of us community members take care of. And in this part where people are trying to cram in as many people into, I'm sorry, Lauren, remain for the record, that I just think it's an important part. Real estate, you can't advertise a house to have 5 bedrooms if one of those bedrooms does not have a closet. So this code is basically just for vacation home rentals, and I think if we need to put for this, only in this part of the code, is that required? I don't know why we can't.
Yeah, Douglas Code doesn't require necessarily that they fit to the neighborhood. So I think we do have things over and above county code. So let me go ahead and throw it out there. And for no other primary purpose, go. I'm ready to take notes.
A question as you make a code change like that, first of all, for the record, sorry. So would the intent be that as we go back and do renewals for 530 properties, if they don't have a closet, they lose a bedroom or 2?
Yep.
No, I think they're grandfathered in.
Nope.
I mean, when you make code changes like that, they are significant and they have real impact, so it's something to definitely think about.
Patty?
No, if Chris is done. Are you done? Yeah, Patty Graff for the record. I agree with Lauren. When you look at a lot of descriptions for a bedroom, they have to have a closet. I think it should, you know, maybe for like a lot of the lay people that I know it's adding more in here, but to put in, you know, what is considered in Douglas County that for a legal bedroom, it must have a closet.
Built in?
Yes.
I would, this is Ernie Strela for the record, this, for you to add to your conversation, and I don't think that's a bad idea. I think I don't know if, it's interesting what you, Chris, what you brought up about retroactive, or, because we're dealing with versions of code, it's driving me nuts. I'm trying to figure out, you know, if an owner, nowadays in the new code, it's illegal, but they're grandfathered because of a lawsuit or a couple codes, or waiting until 2024. So it would be helpful if you guys can make these things applicable upon renewal. That would be my preference. That's when I present it to the Planning Commission, I will certainly ask them to make everything like that, if you agree to that. It's easier to implement.
Well, Patty Graff for the record, isn't in Douglas Code, isn't it already defined that a bedroom has to have a closet, so it's already in there? Not in Douglas County?
No, a bedroom is not a closet, not in Douglas County. Don't know why.
Okay, then
It's just not.
Okay, yeah, then I would, Patty Graff for the record, then I would agree to it upon permit renewal that every bedroom
Yeah.
must have a built-in closet.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you have something you wanted to add?
Douglas County Code, sorry, personal that for the record, Douglas County Code has historically been based off of like the IRC, International Residential Code. So as you look at bedrooms, they're gonna base that code off of that so that they're not, you open yourself up to a gamut of things when you say, I'm gonna go different than what the international community makes as a bedroom. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Lauren?
Is, Lauren Romaine for the record, can we basically make a statement that these changes will be effective upon code adoption, and then you need 30 days or whatever afterwards, unless stated otherwise? Just so that you're aware, and that's, I don't know if you need it written down someplace or whatever, but the intent is that when this becomes adopted, that when that becomes lawful, then that's when it is effective.
You would apply it immediately unless we note otherwise.
Well, you can't go back, okay, wait a minute, I'm sorry, but, oh, you need it upon renewal of the process.
Ernie's
Okay.
for the record, yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of staff, right?
No,
I
and
really keep it
that's,
up.
I got
So
you.
if we were to just stop all our permits
Nope.
and do 530 right away.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's
No,
not, I didn't mean that,
no.
but I guess what I'm saying is, I think if we want to give someone a grandfather period, we'll state it.
Right.
And everything else will come in upon renewal.
Yes.
Yeah, that
That's,
makes
yes,
sense.
okay. And
Yeah,
if we
as long
can,
as it's not a long grandfather period.
no,
Yeah,
no,
that's,
well, okay.
okay, sometimes I don't even use a closet at a hotel. So, Bedroom, you want to add a closet. Okay. Is there anything else on bedroom you'd like
Yes,
to
ma'am.
discuss?
I have been watched in awe and wonder as we've debated what other primary purpose is. So is it a game room that you have a bed in, or is the bedroom you have a pool table in? And are we comfortable? Because, you know, we need to realize, what do we have, 15 tier threes? We're making that judgment on 15 tier threes, and there's 580 tier twos who have the same thing. So either, it ought to be consistent. I'm not saying we'll ever apply it and everything else, but do we need to put some words around, and maybe it's a parking lot issue, of what other primary purposes? You know, we seem to have those ideas in our mind when we looked at, there's a pool table in the kitchen, and and maybe it's just bed. Maybe they were putting sofa beds, and I understood your bed meaning not a sofa bed. Maybe we can consider that sufficient, but I just want to bring it up that we've had long conversations about what other primary purpose is, and would this be something to put on the parking lot and think about how to greater define what a bedroom is for the primary purpose?
That's why we have Mr. Strelo and the parking lot.
You made it to the parking lot.
There we go. That was my goal in life.
So other,
Get taken out of the parking lot.
other primary purposes?
Yes, to define what, and for no other primary purpose means.
Patty Graff for the record, why not just delete that section where it says that the sentence that says, "A bedroom as defined in this chapter must be designed to be used as a sleeping room, period. Every bedroom must have an exterior access," and just remove,
Oh,
and for no other primary purpose. Why not just eliminate that?
Lauren?
Because, Lauren Romaine for the record, because we're going away from what we need to fix. What we need to fix is people who put a billiards table in and then put 2 or 3 sets of bunk beds along the side. That's a billiards room. And so I think instead of going that direction, we need to go more, maybe we need to define it better. But that has to be in there because people will try to make bedrooms out of more things than you can imagine.
Can I offer a suggestion?
Yep.
The purpose of the parking lot is that we put it on the parking lot, we move on.
Well, we're giving you more insight to bring the parking lot items back.
Well, she had a question. We're moving on.
Because here's my problem, primary sleeping, well, you know, not now, but I have a desk in our guest bedroom, and people sleep there.
Right.
And they have to wake up at 6 o'clock when I get a phone call, but I believe it's a primary sleeping room, and I got a little bitty desk in the corner.
Right.
So I don't know if that's a bedroom or not. And so I think there's a lot there, and we need to figure out what pool tables mean, what, you know, TVs. Can I have a couch and a TV in a bedroom? Does that change the nature of it? Probably not as much as a pool table. That's why I'm waiting for Ernie's brilliance to come through with the parking lot areas.
Okay. Can we move on? Okay. Studio apartment means an apartment or other dwelling unit consisting of a single room that serves as a combined space for living, dining, and sleeping. For purposes of this chapter, a studio apartment is deemed to be a bedroom if it meets the requirements of 20.622.020F, with the exception that the primary purpose of the studio apartment need not be a sleeping room. So, comments?
Many.
Yeah, go ahead. This is your cup of tea right here. It has your name on it.
It makes my head hurt. Okay, Lauren Romaine for the record. Also in code, it says that every unit must be a habitable unit. So, my definition of habitable, tell me if I'm wrong, is a place to sleep, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a kitchen is defined as a full refrigerator, a full stove, 6 feet of counter space, water, and storage. So a studio apartment, I think we have to be really careful with this, and I'm trying to find out where the application of studio is. It has to be a habitable unit, number one. Because if you leave studio in there without that requirement of habitable unit, you are going to incentivize building mother-in-law units within a unit, and that's not the purpose of this. This purpose of this is that if someone has a habitable unit that happens to be a studio, where the bedroom is somewhere attached to the rest of the living space, that is okay, and that is okay with me. Does that make sense? And I'm just not sure how to make sure that all of that is encompassed. It is in separate parts and pieces. Okay?
So you're concerned about a studio apartment being construed where somebody could do a non-permitted addition or separation?
Let me make sure the terminology, Lauren Romaine for the record, is completely clear, because Douglas County allows people to build studio apartments within a single family or a multi-family or whatever. If it's a studio and it doesn't meet those kitchen definitions. So I think we've seen a place here where there were 3 separate units within a single family, and as long as you move the big refrigerator and put in a little refrigerator, it's now not considered a residential unit, because we go by those codes or whatever. But people still live in there separately. So what was your question? I would just want to make sure that studio apartment is okay as long as it is a completely habitable unit, because we don't want to incentivize people building, which in a few neighborhoods I know of are dealing with a lot of these things, to make sure that it is a unit. Therefore, if you have 2 of these in a single family, it is no longer a single family. It is a duplex, as long as it's a habitable unit. And somewhere in here, when we allow studio apartments, we need to make sure that habitable is also part of that, so that it is a complete unit. Does that make sense?
AJ Hames for the record. It does make sense.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying. This was added because there had been prior discussion about, well, what if you have a true studio apartment? What the heck is that? It's not a bedroom because it's used for other purposes. So that was sort of the intent of adding this in there, was to address those exceptions.
Right.
What I'm hearing is you're generally fine with that. What your concern is that somebody builds a non-habitable studio apartment, just sort of like a ramshackle room with a little hot plate and a small fridge, and then they want to call that a studio apartment and rent it out as a VHR.
And it's happening.
And so that would be something that you just, what you could easily do, I think, would just be studio apartment means a habitable dwelling unit.
Thank you.
Consisting of.
I think that might work.
Okay.
Should it be, instead of F, should it be E, or, E.1? In other words, if we're doing it to differentiate it from a bedroom, should it be a new paragraph, or should it be a subparagraph of a bedroom?
It comes back into play later on in the code, where it talks about management of units, and then states what the owner's obligations are with regard to bedrooms.
All right.
Okay, any other comments on this? I just wanted one clarification. So a studio apartment, would that be the same as an ADU or a casita or something like that, that's separate from a house, from a residence?
The way that this term is used in the code, as we've added it here, it's really just designed to ensure that that can be counted as a bedroom. So it doesn't change anything else really, other than, can this structure, which looks like a studio apartment, be a bedroom? Previously, the answer was no.
And it's connected to the house?
Whether it's connected or not, whether
Okay.
it's an independent or a connected unit. Previously, if it was a studio apartment, it was technically 0 bedrooms because it had a
all
kitchen.
that. Okay. So studio apartment, we're done with that? Yes? How about G, where we're deleting the true host because it really doesn't exist? Does anybody, Lauren, have any?
I thought a true host was a true what?
Okay, so, yes, well, Lauren Romaine for the record. So, through the sausage making of code, true host got taken out, or rephrased or whatever it is. I find it very confusing. So I think True Host started out as kind of like Airbnb used to be, when you have someone come and stay in a bedroom in your home. And I am okay with that still being allowable, but I do think we need to differentiate it between tiers, and I think we need to give it that name of True Host. Because it then, I think, stops the confusion where people can say, well, I called and I thought I was tier 1. I think that we can, True Host being different from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, whatever, I think is an important thing to do. The other part to it means that the owner in the vacation rental is, and residing is not an okay word for me, because I reside in my home, but I was just on vacation for October. I reside there. I don't know that residing is the right terminology, that the owner is present in the property at all times when renters are present. And I think we also need to put something in there where, and present in the shared space, and you can put except for the bedroom. I mean, I think we need to be very clear that you are present when there's renters, that those renters are renting shared space within that person's shared space. So I'm not gonna build a mother-in-law unit down below, and I'm not gonna block it off and say, I'm in the same building, therefore I'm okay. No, it is shared space except for the bedroom. I mean, if Pouty wants to share this bedroom, that's fine, that's between them, but yes.
I just kind of like throwing this out because the county commissioners threw it out, and they're the ones that are going to look at all our recommendations.
Well, sometimes we have to educate. So let me just go on. Let me go on a second with the ornery with this thing. True Host is such a different and separate entity that I think it needs its own name. And then I do think we need to do some working on tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 as far as the number of occupancy.
Well,
and I just
we will
wanted to tell
get
you
to
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But is there a True Host conceptual person out there that's renting right now a room in their home?
Yes.
Yes. Well, tier ones.
I mean, that's what I mean.
Yes.
They are renting in their homes, they don't have little other, okay. Michael?
I would like to remove the True Host definition, and later on, I'm going to have some arguments to eliminate some of those requirements on the True Host part of a tier 1. So, but that's my feeling on it.
So when we get to tier 1,
Yes.
or tier 1s, you have some discussion.
Yes.
So we
Now,
don't have
is-
a consensus whether to remove this or not, as far as
Correct.
I'm concerned.
So
We do not have
let me
consent.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So just an overview of, just so you kind of know where I'm, Lauren Romaine for the record, so you know where I'm kind of going with this. True Host is, they are in your building, they are sharing rooms with you, you are present while they are there, that kind of very tight, 2 people, one car, very small like it used to be. Then I do believe we need to go to tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, make tier 1, I don't have my numbers exactly, but 1 to 4 people, tier 2, 5 to 10 people, or whatever
we're
you want to
getting
do.
off track.
No, we're not, because I think it's important for people to understand where I'm going.
I think, yeah, you're
Okay.
You're clarifying a little bit more on
Yes.
that one. I think I'm on the same page once we get to tier 1.
Okay, but my only concern is, does this group want to, because True Host is such a different thing and it has so many more requirements to it, should it be True Host and then tiers for something else? Because it's a separate animal of itself. I'm sorry, Mick.
Anybody else on True Host?
I think we should park it right now until we get
Yep.
to tier 1.
Yep, we definitely need to park it, because I'm not on board
Yeah.
with this.
Yeah.
May take care of itself.
And it probably
correct.
will.
Right.
Anybody else on True Host? Moving on to letter I, which is vacation home rental means 1 dwelling unit, removing the part about a portion of rented for lodging of not less than 1 day and not more than 28 days.
My only comment there is I think we were trying to remove the phrase short-term rental, and somewhere up above, I couldn't find it, we kept it in there. So if staff could just look, there, somewhere above,
It's in
short-term
the-
rental is still there.
AJ Hames for the record. It's in the first introductory paragraph where it talks about short-term rentals. I don't think that
Yeah.
it's not capitalized. It's not a term of art, so to speak. It seems more of a common usage of the phrase, and so that was. But
Okay.
it's a valid point, and so I think that is the only other place where short.
Yeah.
They say short. Well, what do they say specifically? I should probably not just speak like I know what I'm talking about. Maybe actually look. In section 4, it says permits the enactment. Okay, the blah blah blah. The board finds that Lake Tahoe Township is the only appropriate and logical choice for the operation of short-term vacation home rentals. And they will be permitted and regulated as set forth in this chapter. And then I think
Just change that wording and take that.
I think that's the only location, and it's
Okay.
even then it's kind of a weird version of short-term rental because it's a short-term vacation home. It's kind of a combination of the two.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Okay, and then where we tear out a portion of the dwelling unit, then how do you have your true host where they're inside the home if it's not allowed to have a portion of a dwelling unit be a vacation rental?
Well,
So-
that's yeah.
And that also conflicts with page 170, 11A. Am I taking all your words from you, Michael?
Yeah.
170, 11A, where you can rent a room, and I don't know what there's a conflict there anyway. Just,
AJ Hames, Madam Chair, if I may.
yes.
AJ Hames from the DA's office. Currently, when staff issues a permit, they issue it specific to an address. And that's always, I don't think there's a single instance where it's been issued to, 123 Smith Drive, bedroom C. It's always been, the permit is attached to the, it has an APN, it's an address, it is a property.
Okay.
And so that's why, in practice, there's never been, as far as I know, a permit issued to a portion of a dwelling unit.
Oh, no.
That's, that makes sense to me as far as for the permit. Okay, Lauren.
Yes. No, Lauren Romaine for the record. There are existing that are in units that exceed of that APN.
But the unit that received the permit, is it not a dwelling? 4 walls?
Okay, so there's instances of a duplex, and by Douglas County standards, it's supposed to be a duplex, but there's actually 3 units in that duplex, and that 3rd unit is a vacation rental.
So this, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yep.
Currently it says means one dwelling unit or a portion of a dwelling unit. So if you've got a duplex and someone illegally creates a triplex, is the 3rd piece of that the illegal part? Is it not a dwelling unit? Is it just kind of a space with a bed in it?
It is a dwelling, it is maybe, this is where habitable came in because we were trying to stop this. And this portion of a dwelling unit actually got put in after the task force, before somehow the legal group got there, and there was a reason to put portion there, but there really isn't, because we don't want it to be a portion of a dwelling, except for what I will say is true host. That's the only time where a portion of a dwelling unit. So we want to say it is a complete habitable dwelling unit that can have a VHR permit, and not a portion. So that portion thing was a weird thing that got shoved in there later.
Well, and I think that's, AJ Hames for the record again, I think that's kind of clear by the fact that there's an incomplete portion of a sentence following it, or a portion of a dwelling unit, including either a single-family attached unit, then there's no or.
Right, yeah.
So something
Right.
So,
was removed that should have been, and maybe parts that were left over were left in. It's my reading of this, that entire section that's crossed out in line 2 was unintentionally left in. And so that's why it was proposed that it just be taken out.
So is this something we want to come back to, or do we have a,
Can we just make sure we have a consensus? I think we do.
Right.
Because Commissioner Tarkanian mentioned at the joint meeting about caretakers or people living in their unit while they rented it out, and he didn't see why we wouldn't allow that. I think before we have reached a consensus that should not be allowed. But I just wanted to reaffirm that, because we've also had one of our Tier 3 say, it makes me more like a Tier 1 or through host. I'm there to make sure the noise doesn't get out of control. So, but we are in a consensus that you can't live in your house and rent it out and be a true host of a Tier 3.
and Keith, that is in here somewhere, because I read it when I was going through this word by word. And there, that is spelled out very specifically somewhere in here.
I think it was a portion that this board voted to add. It's one of the newer
Yeah,
additions.
it might be, but it was in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in here.
So just so I'm clear, Madam Chair, you have an upstairs and a downstairs. You can't live in the downstairs and rent out the upstairs, right? That's what we're talking about, or some variation thereof.
Right.
Got it, okay.
Unless you're a Tier 1.
True host.
Right now.
Right
Yes.
now.
Okay, so
Right.
far, it's
Right.
Well,
Correct. Right.
The
no,
next 15 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
let me just, Lauren Romaine for the record. So the big problem is when they separate out living spaces. So it doesn't matter if it's upstairs, downstairs, doesn't matter wherever. If it's shared living space and you're all living together, if you think about it, that is it monitors itself, because if you're living with people, if you can be separate from them, you know, you can fill that up all the time, whatever it is. If you have to have a shared living space, you're not going to have as many people, you're not going to have as often as people. So it's self-monitoring, I guess, is what it is. And so the important part is that there's not separate living areas when you're talking about, and that's what happens when people rent and own. Now you basically have, in a single family, you now have a duplex. But they're not paying duplex, they're not paying HOA dues, and they're adding more garbage, and they're adding, and it's, I believe it's wrong for us to incentivize those things.
Okay.
Okay, so are we moving on-ish? Let me let you know, we've got like 2 minutes, and we have to stop because we have to be out of here by 4 or shortly thereafter, so.
4-ish.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do is stop pretty soon and take public comment and move on at our next meeting, which is December 14th.
Madam Chair, when you say move on, though, I have other things before we get to permit process.
Right, no, and I
Okay.
want to finish this section
Okay,
here,
all right.
definitely. I was just letting the public know, really. Okay. Go ahead, Keith.
We have seen examples of when what a management company does not meet our common understanding of what a management company does. We had testimony that I'm here because they need a management company, but they advertise it, they contract it, they meet them. I don't do any management services. So I believe in the parking lot, Ernie needs to come up with a definition of what a management company needs, so that if we're required to have one. And by the way, I'm not saying that let's see, to complete everything they could do, but we need some fundamental things that being a management company is doing. You can't just pay someone 1% of your revenues and tell it's a management company. So that was for my parking lot, and
Good.
We're gonna love this one. I think we need to define nuisance noise.
Fine nuisance.
Define.
Oh, define nuisance.
So it's this many decibels for this many minutes.
Okay.
And that's, then, those two things, I think are parking lot issues. Okay.
Good. This is just for you, that's just a typo right there. It should be or instead of of.
Oh, yeah.
Do we read every word?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
We're under definition.
Yes, a definition of nuisance noise.
So, if we're finished with definitions, I think we should just close down our conversation and take some public comment. Are you allowed to now closing public comment and public? We didn't vote on anything.
No
So we-
action, yeah, so you can just go, there was no motion, no action, so you can just.
Should we make any motion to have you guys red line, or will you just do that automatically?
We're already taking.
Okay, okay.
Madam Chair, I do think for the next meeting, I need to know what to make my comments on, because I made them on the Word document, because it was just easier, because I'm a Word guy, and I'm having to constantly look over to Michael, so let's just make sure that we have the one, this is the version we're gonna talk about, in the order we're gonna talk about it, and everybody's on the exact same version.
And Keith, I apologize, I sent that out, the Word version, because I didn't know when the packet was coming out, and I wanted everyone to at least have a Word document
Right.
that they could look at, and then everything kind of came out late due to the holidays
And
and
I
whatnot.
I was on an airplane, so I did all mine on that Word version.
Right,
And I never
right.
went back and looked at the packet to see actually what document was there, because we had a public comment about something that wasn't even in my Word version, so I was like
Yes,
trying to find it.
we all have the same issues.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Haynes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. AJ Haynes for the record. Since there's not been any motion made today, what will probably end up happening is this would be the document that would be used at the next meeting. So there wouldn't really be any change to this document. And then I think staff and myself will continue to take notes at some point, the expectation being that this board will make a motion to create a new red line consistent with your discussion and our notes that we've been taking.
So you're saying we'll start permit process with the same document we have?
We'll use this same document.
Ernie, straight up for that. Yeah, I actually did the opposite of what you and I did last time. I actually had the page number, because you kept saying it's not referencing the.
Yeah.
So I have the online copy,
Yeah.
So that's usually the book of truth is whatever we publish, that's the book of truth. So that's, we should always be using the same version, because that's what the public is referencing, is the page numbers.
Right, and I, like I said, I sent it out early just because I didn't know if everybody, I knew people were coming and going for the holidays.
I'm sorry, I misread your email, like, I took it like, this is something you can obviously change and edit, let's get our words precise, type them, don't give me concepts, give me words, so I just completely
Okay.
misunderstood, so
Okay.
I got it now. So
Okay.
next time I'll show up
Thank
with
you,
the
and is that
right document.
agreeable with you, Ernie?
Yeah.
If we just leave it like this and don't do any
Absolutely.
voting?
Yeah,
Okay.
so what I'll do is when I'll publish the 14th meeting, it'll just be the same file. Right? That's what I'm thinking. So it'll be the same file. You got 3 weeks notice, 2 weeks notice.
Okay. Well, I was hopeful we'd get a little further along today, but our first agenda item became a little messier than I expected. But now I'm going to open up closing public comment.
If it works.
Yeah. Ellie Waller. I just want to thank everybody. I can number mine as well, where I talk about page 1 at the bottom, which is page 165. I could do that before, so everybody follows where I came from. I found, just like everybody else, I'm hoping, I started from page 1, I started from word 1, and I have different interpretations. I had new interpretations today, much like you do, Board Member Byer. You can be swayed because it's just an initial look at something, and I appreciate that I have the opportunity to do this. And I know staff is overburdened. I like what's going on here because things aren't getting lost on the parking lot. I've said and will continually say it's going to take 3 to 5 years. We're going to have new faces sitting here. We're going to have new interpretations. But to get this far, this quickly, you should all be commended. Everybody that participates, from fire to sheriff to whoever needs to put input into this, I appreciate. And I'm looking forward to continuing. And I will renumber mine and wait for new red lines before I make a comment on something I might not have been able to express. So I think as red lines come out, just from a public perspective, I won't confuse the process anymore until it's identified as a new red line or a new addition, which we're using purple or blue or whatever everybody sees as a color. I just appreciate the opportunity to be a member of the public that's invested in the Tahoe community. Even though I don't live here anymore, it's still my backyard. It's still part of my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you.
Is public comment?
Okay, I'm Bob Byron, that's B-Y-R-E-N, and I live at 1259 Hidden Woods Drive in a single-family residential community off Highway 50 near Cave Rock. And I'm going to basically shorten this. I'm not going to take up my 3 minutes. I've got a longer version that I'm going to submit to you, okay? But just let me finish. Okay, I spoke at a VHR advisory board meeting a few weeks ago in opposition to the law of Tier 3 proposal for 1211 US Highway 50, along with several of my neighbors. As you may recall, this issue sparked heated discussion regarding fencing, trespassing, trash, and noise issues for adjacent and nearby properties. Since changes to the VHR ordinance are being discussed, I must ask an obvious question. Why are we even considering Tier 2 and Tier 3 owner unoccupied short-term vacation home rentals within the residential corridor north of the Zephyr Cove Resort? Our Hidden Woods HOA, as do many regulated communities within this corridor, has a covenant restricting leases to single families and for periods exceeding 6 months. Our HOA board recently paid legal counsel to verify that our bylaws and CC&Rs indeed prohibited fractional and timeshare ownership, which was confirmed. I see no good reason why multifamily short-term vacation rentals should be permitted on properties immediately adjacent or within earshot of our homeowners. Okay, I'll leave it at that, and we should have given this
If you give that to Ernie, he can publish it to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Then I guess we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for your patience. I'm a little shocked.
I'm happy to have all of that.